Hello and welcome to Mike Dolan Games and our reoccurring Unity tutorial on making a space sim. Tonight we are going to take a look at creating the beginnings of a damage system in our game, so you'll be able to use the lasers that we created in the previous episode and use those to blow things up. So let me show you kind of an example of what where our goal is tonight. So here is an asteroid with a shield around it. Okay, so both the asteroid and the shield have a damage class on it, and so the shield just exploded because it took enough damage. And now we're going to destroy the asteroid. Okay, so the shield there had a particle system explosion on it, and the asteroid actually just had a mesh replacement on it. So we can instantiate either of those with our damageable class. Okay, so this big capital ship has a shield on it that I just destroyed, and I just wanted to show that part of the way that we can use this damage system is we can create kind of modular components on our ships that we can target and destroy. So that can be important for creating kind of complex combat. So say you want to take out a big capital ship like this, maybe you take out the turrets first, take out the command center or the engines. I don't have a damageable on these engines, but you can imagine that different parts of the ship could be damageable, okay? And then you could swap out the debris and things like that. So that's kind of what we're getting at. And you'll see here, if I click on the asteroid mesh, it has a mesh collider on it. And then right next to it, I have a damageable script here with the maximum HP and then the current HP. And then the type of damageable it is. So it can be armor, hull, shield, and system. Right now these don't matter too much, but like as you make your game more complex, different types of weapons might hurt different types of things. And then you can have a status. So say this is a system component on a ship, like a shield generator or engines. You could have minor damage and have the engines glitch a little bit, or they could be broken, they stop working, or they can be completely destroyed, and then this would probably be disabled. Finally, we have a explosion prefab that we can generate, and you can make those kind of destruction systems even more complex than this. You could have different, like an array of levels of mesh destruction, or maybe multi-layer explosions and things like that. So anyway, so let's get started. This is actually pretty simple to create. So we just, as long as we have a collider and a damageable right now, we can basically, and some sort of explosion prefab, we can basically make anything kind of blow up once we add it. Okay, so let's get started. And obviously there's different pieces that we can expand on and make a little bit more modular and make a little bit more object-oriented. So, okay, so I'm going to open up our regular tutorial here, and I'm going to show you how to get started. Okay, so this is basically where we left off with our last tutorial. We have our weapon system in here. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we are going to just go into your project, and I have a scripts folder. It's probably a good place to store your scripts. I need to do some cleanup here anyway. So just add a script to your script folder, okay, and call it damageable. Yes, that is how you spell it. Okay, so create that script and then open it up. All right, and then, oops, okay. So open up your damageable script, and you'll have a couple different things here. I think, let's see. Yeah, so this is basically what we need, and we're not going to really need an update function, and actually for this iteration we're not even going to need the start function, so we'll delete all that. Okay. So like we went over before, we have a couple things that we want to add here. The first thing we want to add is an enumerator. Okay, so it's an enum. Enum. It's basically just a list of type values that you can use. Kind of makes it easier to understand what what things are rather than just giving a like a number value. So like our damageable type. So how you do that? You just type public enum and then damageable type. Okay, and we could have damageable type like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you could look up like, oh, 1 is shield and 2 is hull or something like that. But if you create an enum like this, these actually equal numbers, and there's all sorts of things that you can do to interact with enums. So and they're all, if you hover over them, you'll see like this one says damageable hull equals 0. So actually they do convert to numbers in the kind of in the back end in the compiler. So and you can access them by number as well. We're not going to do that today, but you can. So I'm also going to add my damageable status. Okay. Now again, these are like these things that we're doing with the enums actually are kind of ways that you're going to be able to expand this later. So we'll just have them in here, and then when we get more complex with our damage, it'll be really cool. So let's just add them now, and then we'll have them. Okay, so I forgot enum here. Alright, so we just, and don't call it a statute, call it status. Alright, so once you have those two enums, the most important things are your HP. So I usually have a max HP and then just a regular HP. So max HP, so say you want to repair, you got to know when you have full health, basically. So having max HP stored is a good idea. Okay, and then since we have our enums up there, we can now create an actual damageable type variable, and we'll just call it damageable type lowercase equals. And this is how you can set your enum. You can use an enum to create a value. So now we have a variable called damageable type that belongs to our class here, and this one will set the default to hull. Okay, so the hull of the ship is like the big part of the ship, and it's kind of the default too. It doesn't really matter. Hull damage would be kind of anything that's kinetic, but energy or heat or explosive damage could also destroy it. So it's kind of a catch-all. Okay, so you might have different weapons that destroy different things. So certain weapons might destroy shields better, things like that. Okay, so now we'll do our damageable status, and we will give it, oops, we have a lot of things called damageable in here. Damageable status, and our status will be okay. Okay, so that just means everything's working. All right, and finally, the last thing we're going to need is a explosion. Ooh, we're going to make it a game object. Explosion prefab. Now, I'm calling it explosion prefab because that's kind of like the way I initially thought about it, but again, as I demonstrated with the asteroid, you could have, instead of an explosion, you could just instantiate a destroyed version of your mesh and have like kind of an explosive script attached to it. So, okay, so you could do that too, or have like a complex prefab that does particle effects and also has the mesh. Just have it all together. Okay, and then instantiate it in one fell swoop. Okay, let's get on with the actual methods. Okay, so these are all the things we need. You could probably skip the enum stuff if you want and just have max HP. Here, I'll even move this up here. So this stuff is kind of negligible. If you just wanted to skip it, you could skip those. But you definitely want max HP, or just HP and explosion prefab. Okay, now let's do a private void on collision enter. Okay, so the very so this is kind of how we're going to manage our collisions with this piece of the ship or the whole ship or however you're setting up your damageable system. Okay, so things that we're going to need. We're going to come up with a damage amount. to figure out the damage amount. And now this code is based on our previous tutorial. So if you did not do some of the things in the previous tutorial, like set up an ordnance class, what this is doing is it's checking if the thing that hit us, okay, so this collision here gets passed in whenever we hit anything. Okay, so in this if statement, it's saying, okay, we hit something. What is the game object that we hit? Does it have an ordnance class on it? If it has an ordnance class on it, it means that it's something that was fired out of a weapon and is hitting us, and that means it has a bunch of information that we can use. If it doesn't, that means we would have bumped into something. Okay, so we're actually going to have an else statement, and we are. Oof, what just happened here? Oh, okay, good. Yeah, and so the else statement is basically going to be a catch-all. So you hit something, and I'm just going to give it 10. Okay, so say you crash into something that doesn't have a ordnance on it, you're just going to get 10 damage. Okay, now if you hit an ordnance, then we're going to try to calculate some damage based on that ordnance, and I'm actually going to create a different method to do this, because this could become a complicated task depending on how complex your damage system gets. So we're going to pass in the ordnance here, and I'm going to create a method called getDamageAmount, and we can click our light bulb here and generate it. Okay, so so what's this doing? It's checking to see if we hit something that has ordnance. If it is, that means it's an ordnance, some sort of missile or laser. And then if it is, then we're going to calculate our damage amount by calling this method. Okay, so now let's go down to our damage amount, and you'll see here that it's returning a float. And this Visual Studio did this automatically for us, which is cool. Okay, and we need to return that float somehow. All right, so we want to be able to get, and I'm just kind of making this these methods so that it's readable, but also so that in the future, we are going to we can expand how damage is calculated and things like that. So this is pretty simple here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see whether the damageable type that we have is a shield. Okay, so damageable type. All right, so damageable type is equal to damageable type.shield. Okay, so if our damageable type is shield, then we are going to take the ordnance shield damage. Else, this is a ternary, it's just basically an if statement. Ordnance dot armor or hull. I guess it's armor damage. That's how we worked it out before. Okay, there might be hull damage too, but these are kind of basically, this is energy damage. This is kinetic damage. We might change this in the future, but okay, so basically now you can actually have weapons that do different types of damage, and depending on the type of damageable that you're creating, a shield or an armor or a hull or whatever, you can set the type of damage. Okay, so you could have bullets that are super weak towards shields, but energy weapons that are powerful against shields. You can take down the shields faster, cause more damage. Okay, so that's what this is doing, and now it's going to return. So basically, when it checks this damage type, these are the values that it's going to return. It's either going to return shield damage or it's going to return armor damage. So it looks like it's returning damage type, but it's actually returning whatever the answer to that if statement is. Okay, so once we have that, okay, so now we're returning our damage type in here if we hit ordnance. Else we're just going to do some sort of collision damage, and you might want to calculate this based on velocity or something like that, but you'd have to tie in with your parent object. Okay, and then I'm going to create another method called take damage, and we're going to call that, and we're going to pass in our damage amount to this one. Okay, and again, if you just hit the light bulb, you can generate it. Okay, so here's our take damage. Okay, takes our damage amount, and this is not going to be that hard to create. Okay, so basically, we are just going to take our HP and make it equal to HP minus damage amount. Okay, now you can do all sorts of things here. If you want to make it more of a role-playing game, you can have all sorts of buffs or debuffs or things to prevent damage and stuff. And we'll even institute a little bit more of an interesting thing here in a second. Okay, but now this is basically how you would set it up. The final check is you probably want to determine whether your HP is less than or equal to 0. And if it is, you want to call a new method called destroyed. Don't call it destroy because Unity has a method called destroy. So we want to generate our own method called destroyed. Okay, so you're taking damage. If you're less than 0, then we've been destroyed. And inside destroyed, we're going to instantiate our explosion prefab, and we'll just drop it right in to the transform position. Oops. So just drop the explosion right on top of this damageable component. And quaternion, we don't really need a rotation probably. Maybe we do if, I guess if the ship is turned around or something like that and you're using some sort of damaged ship prefab or something like that, this might have to match whichever way this thing is facing, but I think this will work. This seems to be working for my other stuff. Okay, so now if it's destroyed, we're going to instantiate the prefab. Cool. One problem with this is your whatever you're destroying is still going to be there because you just added something new. You didn't get rid of it. So you just have to do destroy game object, and that's it. Okay. Now this all assumes that the damageable thing is kind of on the main piece of whatever it is that's damageable and destroyable. So you could also have like a reference or something like that to the piece that's being destroyed if you want. And if that's the case, you're going to have to add some more public variables. But this here, as long as the damageable is on the thing that has the mesh collider or the whatever type of collider and is on the game object that you want to destroy, this is kind of where you go. Another thing that we would think about is when we do object pooling and stuff like that, we might not destroy the object. We might just return it back to the pool. So right now we're instantiating and destroying things. We're not using pooling. So anytime you see instantiate in the future, if we start doing object pooling, probably want to get rid of these instantiations. Okay, so to reiterate, we're going to, if we collide with something, we're going to check and see if it's an ordnance. If it's an ordnance, we're going to figure out what kind of damage it does and what kind of damage we take, and then return that. And if not, if we just hit something, we're going to just add some damage here. Then we're going to take that damage. And when we take the damage, it's just going to subtract some damage from our HP. And if our HP hits 0, we're going to be destroyed. And then if we're destroyed, we're going to instantiate our explosion and destroy our game object. Okay? So that is, in a nutshell, our damageable class. Okay, so we used our damageable type here to check for armor or shields. We didn't use our damage status yet, but let's save this and see how we're doing. Okay, so all right, okay, so now we have our damageable class. Let's show you how to set this up. So if we grab, well, Okay, I'm just going to click on the background. So I'm going to click on the asteroid field, grab an asteroid that's close by-ish. Okay, so this is this one. Okay, so if you have an asteroid or some sort of object, you could just create a cube for this if you want. But you just want to grab an object. I'm going to pull it out of my asteroid field so I can work with it. Okay, so I have this. So one of the kind of technicalities of doing this, and I haven't quite mastered this issue, but if you you have to do this damageable on this mesh collider. So you could go and search for the mesh collider if you wanted to, but right now ours is just looking for it on our object here. So just drag this onto the mesh part of your object, whatever it is. It could just be your game object if it's a cube or whatever, but you want to make sure you're kind of at the same level as the mesh collider. Okay, that might not matter, but okay, so yeah, that might actually matter. Here, I'm going to try that. Okay, so let's just put it on the base of the game object like this, but make sure you have a mesh collider, okay? And make sure the mesh collider is on the mesh, because if it's not, can I see this? Where is it? Okay. See, sometimes these mesh colliders are so, they get messed up with the mesh. So, okay, let's see. I think this is going to work. All right, we have our damage type set to armor, okay, and then our status is okay. We'll give our asteroid 100 hit points and 100 hit points, and then we have our explosion prefab from our previous tutorial. So if you just grab that, oops, grab your explosion tutorial, your explosion prefab, and put it in here. Any type of particle system you can use for that. So you can get a sort of a good look at this if you want. You can pause the video and kind of figure out how this works, but we did talk about it in the previous videos. Okay, so you have your asteroid, you've got your damageable, you've got kind of what type of type you want, and then you have your HP and your explosion, okay? So now, if we look at this thing, and we fire at it, I'm going to pause it real quick. See, it doesn't look like it's working. Okay, so, all right. You cannot have this damageable here. That's what I thought. Okay, so you need to put the damageable script with the mesh collider. Okay, we'll give it 100. Okay. All right, so there's probably something else you could do to make that work, but right now this is how this damageable script works. Okay, so we moved it to our mesh here. Oh, look at that, one hit. Oh, I know why, because the AI just crashed into it. Oh, or maybe not. Do we do 100 damage with our lasers? All right, what is our gun firing? Let's look. Oh, we don't have a weapon barrel. Oh, okay, that automatically figures it out. All right, so our ordnance does 100 armor damage. Okay, yeah, so let's bring this down to like 5 damage and then 5 damage. All right, yeah, so we have super powered lasers. Okay, so you'll see here, we'll hit it a few times, and then I'm going to pause. And then if we look at this asteroid, now we have 80 HP. Okay, so it's going down. And if we keep firing at it, eventually one day, oh, there it is, it explodes. Okay, all right, so that is the basics for how to set it up. Okay, so the other thing you can do is you can layer things on these, right? So you could have a in the example that I showed in the beginning, I put like a a sphere around our, oh, this is weird, okay. Huh. It seems a little bit gigantic. Okay, let's see if I can do 50. So the scaling's all weird in here, because I think this mesh is scaled. Okay, yeah, so it's a little bit weird. Okay, so we have our sphere. I'm going to see if there's a material that I can use that makes it see-through. So basically you want to just create a, yeah, we'll just make one. Okay, so we can make a shield material for this. So if you go up to create, and I have a materials folder, so I'm going to use that. All right, and create a material. Okay, I'm just going to call this shield. I don't think I have one called shield yet. Okay, and then in the material editor, set your rendering to transparent, and then what I like to do is actually, let's go to emission, click it on, set it, I like blue, okay, and then we'll throw this on here now so we can see it. Okay, so it's still not see-through, so go up to the albedo and just drag the alpha down. Okay, maybe about to there. So I have mine on 23 for alpha, and then in your HDR, you're gonna have to, let's see, do we need to move this? No, in the HDR, you're gonna have to, where is it? Intensity. So bring the intensity down a little bit in the HDR. That will at least make it look see-through. Okay, so now we have our shield. All right, so shield. All right, so the same thing. We just we've added this object. It's a child of our bigger asteroid object. Okay, but it's on top of it. Okay, so we have our sphere collider now, and we just add a damageable, and we'll say, oh yeah, we want our HP to be 100 for shields. Okay, and then in our player gun, we use lasers. So our lasers are really good at destroying shields. So we're going to do 25 damage for shield, but only 5 for armor. So it's going to take a lot longer to destroy the asteroid than it is to destroy the shield. Okay, even though they have the same amount of armor or same amount of HP. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have an error, I think. Okay. Let's see. Oh, we don't have an error, but I didn't put an explosion in here. And I didn't make it shield. Okay. So our damageable type for shield is shield. That's one thing you gotta set up. That way, now our shield damage will work with that. Instead, we were getting the armor again. And then we want to make sure we have an explosion. So let's just throw this on here. Okay. Now we should just, 4 hits should destroy the shield. Okay, so that destroyed, and then the armor. Whew. All right, we got it. Okay, so this is already starting to be a little bit of a long tutorial. So the last thing that I kind of want to show you is one thing that I think is kind of fun, and it kind of comes from I believe that Starfinder, the RPG, has it in it. It's when you're being hit in a ship, you can take kind of like critical system damage and things like that. So say like these components are mounted on the ship and they're like a shield generator or something like that. So perhaps you take a bunch of damage and you take like more damage than is kind of reasonable for the component, but maybe it doesn't outright destroy it. You can have a like a critical hit check, okay? And I'm just going to paste this in. Ooh, I'm not going to paste that in, I guess. I'm just going to paste this code in for you to see. Okay, so these are the 2 methods that I just dropped in here. Okay, so the first one is check for critical hit, and it's just going to return a bool, just a true or false. but it's gonna take the damage amount as a parameter. Okay, so if the damage amount is 2/3 greater than your HP, whatever your current HP is, that means you just took a huge hit. Okay, so 2/3 of your life force has been smashed out of you. Okay, and this basically scales. So if you only have 2 hit points and you take a regular amount of damage, you might still get a chance for a critical hit. Okay, so it returns true. And then if it's not 2/3 the amount of your HP, then or greater, then it will return false. Okay, so it checks for that. Now, if you get a true, then we'll go down to this next method, which is called take a critical hit. And this is just going to do a random number. Okay, and it's if you're not using system, which I don't think this project currently is, you don't need to use Unity Engine here. You can just do random. So you can do random range 0. Oh, maybe we do need it. Okay, Control Z. Okay, so maybe I have it up here. Yeah, I'm using system. Okay, so there's like a clash between random and system random. So Unity Engine random dot range 0 to 100. It's going to pick a number between 1 and 100. Well, actually 1 and 99, or 0 and 99. So if it's greater than 50, we're going to have minor damage. Okay, if it's greater than 80, then it's broken. So these are going to override each other. And then if it's greater than or equal to 99, it's destroyed. And did I not have a... Did I spell destroyed wrong up here? Destroy. Okay. So a big critical hit, which is like a 1 in 100 chance, you get destroyed. Okay. So how do we use this? Right before the take damage, you can do a check for critical hit damage amount, and then you can do this. So if it's true, then take critical hit. Else nothing. Yeah. Okay. We can't be that fancy, I guess. Might be. If anyone knows that in the comments, like, is there a way to do kind of a ternary without an else in C#? If this is true, then do this. Okay. So that's simple too. So we're just checking if there's a critical hit. If it returns true, then we're going to take the critical hit, and then it's going to roll the dice, basically. And regardless, we're going to take damage. Okay. Now, we don't have the damage status of destroyed actually destroying you, but you could have that set up. So if status, let's see, damageable status dot, oh wait, we want lowercase damageable status equals damageable status dot destroyed, then you go destroyed. Okay, so you could do that, right? So if it gets set to destroyed, then just destroy it. We'll skip damage altogether. Boom, it explodes. Okay, and now you have a critical hit check. So our current weapon wouldn't really ever hit this amount of damage. But say you got hit with like a big beam weapon or something like that. Okay, so we could actually change this to, we'll hit the laser here, and we'll make shield damage do 75. Okay, so one hit will do 76 damage. I forget if it's inclusive, so one hit will be 2/3 of 100, okay? And the shield has 100 hit points, right? So now there's a possibility that we'll score a critical. Let's see. The shield now has minor damage. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop here for tonight. And in the future, we'll go on to kind of maybe checking out how you can apply this to like a capital ship to attack different pieces, although everything that we did tonight, you can definitely apply to that already. So I hope this was helpful, and please like and subscribe and leave any comments or questions for me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this tutorial series, and please subscribe and make sure you bookmark that playlist. Okay, well, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.